Remember when Luke Skywalker made his long-awaited cameo appearance in the Mandalorian series, and we were all screaming and screeching at the top of our lungs at our television screen? No, was that just me? Anyways, as the saying goes, every time I get out, they always try to pull me back in. And that perfectly describes the Book of Boba Fett and the Mandalorian series, where every single episode has to be taken almost as like its own identity. The Book of Boba was a perfect example of this. The first 3 to 4 episodes were absolutely unbearable. Horrible writing, horrible directing. There was not really much to look at. It was taking place with the Sand People or the Tusken Raiders out in the desert. His skin always looked dry, so the entire show made me really thirsty. That's not a double entendre. That's not like a wink wink moment. It genuinely made me thirsty because his skin was always cracking. But they definitely redeemed themselves in the last few episodes of the show, where Din Djarin was going on his quest. I think that's where the show overall was able to really hit its stride. So as I mentioned, it's kind of hit or miss. I think there are episodes that you just have to get through to fully experience any of the Disney Plus shows. I think that's been kind of something that's consistent throughout every single series that they've released thus far, and the Mandalorian series is no exception. Episode number 1 for the 3rd season of the Mandalorian, as I mentioned, was completely unbearable. Anybody that was able to finish it deserves some sort of medal or award. However, even though the 2nd episode didn't do a full 180, I do feel that it's kind of gearing or turning in the correct direction. I really love some of the things that they did. I mentioned this in the previous video. I love Bo-Katan's character. She's probably my favorite one at the moment. She's kind of torn. She's hopeless. She's obviously devastated after what happened to her home. I just love the fact that she's not as pure-hearted as some of the other Mandalorians or just some of the overall characters that we've seen. They've really tried to do that. They've introduced more gray characters or just people that are just trying to fend for themselves out there in the galaxy, and I really do enjoy that rather than seeing, good versus evil. There's a lot of people that are just trying to survive and, just trying to get by in a galaxy that's kind of torn apart or trying to rebuild. Without going too into detail or too in-depth into this episode, I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as I possibly can. I know it's kind of difficult, but I'll kind of just breeze through what I really loved about the episode and why I feel like if you were trying to jump off the bandwagon after just one episode, if you guys saw the entirety of episode number 1, you guys are familiar with what's happening. Din Djarin is out to redeem himself. He's trying to, find Mandalore and then find the living waters. He's supposed to bathe in them and then basically never take his helmet off, which sounds ridiculously uncomfortable, but as Din Djarin would say, this is the way. And they go on a little bit of a quest, Bo-Katan, Din Djarin, and probably the most evil character that I've ever seen in my entire life, Grogu. I've said this before, I think he's going to turn out to be like the most powerful Sith Lord of all time, right up there with Jar Jar Binks. He did eat those ladies' eggs after all. I've kind of mentioned this in previous episodes. One of my biggest gripes with the show overall is just how ridiculous it is that Din Djarin and Grogu have survived so many different things from, the beginning of the show, from episode number 1 all the way to the final episode of the 2nd season, and yet somehow his objective or his main priority is for him to redeem his status as a Mandalorian rather than continuing to care for Grogu. It's absolutely baffling, but if you're able to overcome that minor little detail, I think you can genuinely enjoy episode number 2. As I mentioned, Bo-Katan reluctantly decides to join up with them, and I think they make a formidable team. I like them together in a group. They have great team chemistry. Din Djarin is obviously Michael, Bo-Katan is Scottie Pippen, and then Grogu probably is, I don't know, maybe Phil Jackson. Don't hate me for using a sports analogy in a Star Wars video. I really couldn't help myself. I've said this before and I'll continue saying it, but I don't really love the fact that the budget seems to be really holding back some of these episodes. There are definitely moments where it feels like it's like a set from like the early 90s or like late 90s. There's very little effort put into it. And I'm usually not a guy that says more CGI, but I definitely feel like we need, either more practical effects or more special effects. There's not enough action, but that's definitely not something that this episode is lacking. Bo-Katan, and without really spoiling anything, she does at one point use her shield and does wield the Darksaber for just a little bit. There's another scene, I'm not really going to spoil it, but Din Djarin is kind of in a little bit of trouble and she springs into action, and you can definitely see the difference between maybe like a stunt double and then where the CGI kicks in. But I genuinely enjoy those tiny little brief moments. They encapsulated everything that I love about the Star Wars universe. I think if they're able to balance a little bit more of the practical effects along with the CGI and truly capture why The Mandalorian is such a great series overall. Like I said, I don't think that this is a perfect episode, but there are these little encapsulated moments that I think really seal it for me. I think potentially we could see this heading in a new direction. I've already watched episode number 3. I'll probably do a little recap or talk a little bit about it, but I just have to say, don't give up on the show just yet. I think the next 2 episodes could really change your mind and your perspective. I think it's doing that for me. And if none of this 100% convinces you, let me just tell you, there is some really cute baby talk from Grogu. I think he's starting to develop, maybe. I'm not sure how his race grows up, but he does say some really cute little kind of like baby coos or like baby little gurgles, and I definitely feel like if anything it's worth just, you know, tuning in just for that alone. Enjoy him while he's this cute little tiny green dude that supposedly wants to do good, because like I said, I think I definitely sense a disturbance in the force here. But let me know in the comment section what you guys think. I'm very curious to see your guys' take and whether, you know, we're anywhere close to each other. I think there's a lot of good stuff on the horizon, a lot of good stuff in the future. I didn't want to start becoming one of those guys that talks about The Mandalorian every single week, but I'll see where this leads. Like I said, let me know in the comment section if you guys want to see more of this, or if you guys are tired of me just babbling on and just spitting saliva into my mic. So thank you guys for tuning in. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.